Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SEC Boys podcast. I am joined today by Levi. We are
What
going to get
up?
in. Yes, sir. We're going to get into some SEC power rankings for week heading into week seven. Uh, SEC Boys is a segment on our Vol Boys Media channel where we take a look around the SEC through orange tinted glasses. So yeah, week seven, headed into week seven right here. We'll start from the bottom to the top. Let's see. So at number 14, we both agree on this one.
Yep.
Vanderbilt. I'll let you go first. Talk a little bit about the Commodores.
It's pretty obvious that they're dead last. You could maybe make an argument that Mississippi State is is worse, but I really don't think you can make the argument,
Mhm.
in my opinion. I just think Vanderbilt's dead last. Um, they really haven't looked great all season. They've definitely, to me, they've taken a step back. They were a better team last year. I don't think they're going to get some of the wins that they got last year. So I don't know. The UNLV game's one game that kind of sticks out to me because they lost that game, and
Right.
that's not a good loss. So to me,
Yeah.
at this moment, they're the worst. Will they catch a team like they did last year, a team or two like they did last year? We'll see. But as of right now, they're dead last for me.
Yeah, I agree. Completely. They I agree, like exactly what you said. For me too, they've taken a step back from last year's team. This is a team last year that beat Florida, obviously. Um, they just have not looked competitive at all in any of their SEC games thus far. They played Florida, Missouri, and Kentucky. Just haven't looked very competitive in any of those games. Not honestly, not much to say about them. They're the bottom of the SEC.
And they don't even
Um,
play Mississippi State either.
no,
So it's
but if
like
they did, that might be a good game.
that's really their only shot. Maybe South Carolina, maybe.
Maybe
We'll
they
see,
can
but
catch them.
even I don't know. I don't think South Carolina's that bad.
I
But
would not be surprised if they don't win a game in SEC play so far this or at all this year.
yeah,
Um, 13, we obviously both have Mississippi State. For me, they they have been one of the most disappointing teams so far, uh, in general this year. They've obviously completely changed their whole offensive philosophy around, from throwing the ball 50 times a game last season to like 20 times a game this season. Haven't been competitive at all. Beat a Western Michigan team by 14 points at home last week. Uh, I have been really disappointed in what I've seen so far, and supposedly their head coach Zach Arnett uh, is on a replace what's it called? Not a filling interim head coach contract currently. Apparently, I would not be surprised if they
they let
fire
him go.
him. Yeah, let him go next season.
Well,
I mean,
I mean, he's just completely changed around a team that was successful last year.
right.
Nine and 3 was what they had last year, right?
Yeah,
You take a 9-3 team and you turn them into most likely a not even going to a bowl game team.
right.
That's horrible. This Mississippi State job honestly should have been a really sought after job because they were in a good place. If
Right.
Mississippi State would have played it smarter and hired a better coach, they would have been in a good place to stay on the course that they were on. But no, they decided to hire an in-house hire, and it's got them to where they are now.
You've got a defensive minded coach who is whose team is not playing good defense right now. And whose offense looks lost. Changing around a roster like or a scheme like that doesn't happen overnight, right? You got to have the players for it. If you have the players from last year's team on this year's team, why change the offensive philosophy? It's kind of mind-boggling. It's gonna be really interesting because they've got Arkansas in 2 weeks from now. They're on a bye week, and then they have Auburn the game after that. Those are gonna be really interesting games. teams at the bottom of the SEC.
Yeah,
Um,
those are
it's honestly shocking where they're at right now currently.
yeah, those are definitely their only two shots probably at winning an SEC game the rest of the season. So we'll see how that goes. I think both those teams are better than Mississippi State, but who
Yes,
knows? Arkansas is not in a great spot either. Auburn's got a first-year head coach, so really anything can happen. But I mean, they've already played South Carolina as one of the worst teams on their schedule, and they couldn't win that game.
right.
While they did make it competitive, they couldn't get the win. So I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
You want to go ahead with Arkansas?
Sure. Arkansas. I don't know. A lot of these I feel like are interchangeable. This
Yeah.
this year the SEC is not that great. I would say to me 10 through 12 are very interchangeable, and I think same thing with 6 through 3. I think those are very interchangeable. Maybe even 7 through 3 honestly.
Hmm.
8 and 9 I think Kentucky and Florida that's perfectly. But this Arkansas team to me they could be a 10, they could be 11, but I don't know. They just don't seem like they're gonna get like they've kept it close in a lot of games, but they can't finish games. So that makes me want to put them up higher, but good teams find ways to win. So to me, they're not a very good team. That could change as the season goes, but at the moment, they're at 12, and it's kind of sucks because Sam Pittman was looking like a really good coach early on,
Right.
and now Arkansas
He's on the
fans
hot
are
seat,
looking to
big
fire
time.
him. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's just kind of my thoughts on Arkansas. I could see them being the 10 or the 11. Really, all three of those spots are interchangeable, but
Hmm.
I just decided 12 for them.
Yeah, I've got South Carolina at 12. Obviously, we know South Carolina can't block anybody. They also can't run the ball. They only have 435 yards rushing on the year, worse than the SEC. They're also averaging the least points per game in the SEC at 27. Secondary is really bad. Uh, Rattler's carrying the team right now.
Offensive
It's
line.
offensive line's horrible. It's going to be hard for them to win games. And I just they're at a disadvantage for every SEC team they play, other than I'd say Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
Even that might be a competitive game. Um, I they just have not been impressive. Obviously, they had a win over Mississippi State um, to get them an SEC win, but that could be the only one that they have this year
yeah.
if they don't beat Vanderbilt. So I
And
just really haven't been impressed with them at all.
I think they get the win over Vanderbilt easily, hopefully
Hmm.
for them. I think the Florida game could be an intriguing one.
Yeah,
Personally, I
I'm very
think
interested about that. Yeah.
right now I think Florida wins. I don't think Florida's that bad,
Hmm.
but um, I don't know. I could see South Carolina seeing it as a turning point and trying to give their all because a lot of times when you get upsets like that where South Carolina beats Florida, you just you see a team with their back against the wall and they put
Hmm.
give everything they've got to win the game. Similar to, honestly to the Tennessee Florida game. I think Tennessee's a better team than Florida, but Tennessee's all in their head and Florida had their back against the wall and they performed at home. I think South Carolina, is this a home game? Is it a home game
They are at
for
home and they're actually favored by two. South Carolina's at home and favored by two right
Yeah,
now.
so I think it's going to be a situation possibly where South Carolina's got their back to the wall and Spencer Rattler has himself a game. But at the moment, I'm going to say Florida's going to win that game, and that's why I
I mean,
have Florida.
Florida's defensive line's pretty good. I mean,
Yeah,
they pushed us around. They pushed Tennessee around all game. So
but anything could happen in South Carolina Stadium. Is it a
yep,
night game? Do you know if it what
it's a
time?
3:30 kick.
3:30.
Yep.
So that's not optimal for South Carolina, but that's still a pretty good time for them
Hmm.
to make a good get a good crowd. I think South Carolina is the worse team than Florida, but I would not be shocked if they won that game, just considering they have their back to the wall right now, and it's at home. But
Yeah.
South Carolina, they just got, as Trevor was saying, they've just got a lot that's not going for them. The
Yeah.
only thing they have going for them is a quarterback who's better than most of the starting quarterbacks in the SEC right now. But
Hmm.
if you don't have any pieces to go with that, there's not much you can do. If you can't
Exactly.
block for them, you don't have anyone to throw other than Leggett. There really isn't much South Carolina can do. So they just gotta hope for a prayer and maybe they'll catch a team or two going
Yeah.
on. going through the schedule. But
Yeah, and you've got South Carolina at your 11th spot. Um, but at mine, I've got Auburn. They play LSU this week. For me, they've been fairly competitive, and that's what I kind of like about Arkansas and Auburn, right? They have not played well. They haven't won a game in conference yet. Both teams have been very competitive, though. Obviously, Auburn kept it close with Georgia, and they didn't get blown out by A&M. They lost 27-10. 0-2 in conference currently. A first-year head coach, but I'm really liking what Hugh Freeze is doing right now. And I think they've got potential for the future. I don't think this is going to be a bad team next season. Currently, though, they don't really have a quarterback.
yeah,
They play two different guys right now. Haven't been able to find great offense. They're last in the SEC in total offensive yards. They're 11th in points scored a game. Uh, just can't really move the ball much. Defense hasn't been terrible though, but haven't really been able to implement his scheme yet. I don't think he doesn't have the players he needs right now. But
yeah.
yeah,
I'll be honest. So my number 10, I'll go ahead and go into that, is also
hmm
is Auburn.
yeah,
So I have them a little bit higher. I'll be honest, I haven't watched too many Auburn games this year,
yeah.
mainly because they really haven't played a lot of really great games this year. Like they haven't played,
High caliber teams.
yeah, other than the Georgia game, which is like the only one that I think I've watched.
hmm
Uh, and in that game, they kept it close against the number one team. So that's kind of where I'm coming from when I'm giving them the 10 instead of the
Right.
11, is I just see them as more competitive than South Carolina and Arkansas personally.
hmm
But then again, I really could see all three of those being interchangeable. But
Yeah,
I just
they're
give Auburn the
also
edge.
yeah they're also last in the SEC in pass yards game.
Yeah.
Uh, at 156. They're averaging 156 pass yards a game. They are also last in total pass yards, 781.
What's their
Like I said,
defense?
they can't throw the football. I don't have that pulled up currently. Looking at the scores, obviously they kept Georgia to 27, also kept A&M to 27.
Hmm.
Um, Played a really ugly game against Cal.
Yeah. Did they
Um,
win that one? Didn't they win it
they
though?
did. Yeah, they
Yeah.
won. Let's see. Yeah, they won 14-10.
I could see them finishing last in the West this year. I could see them finishing ahead of Arkansas and Mississippi State. I really don't know.
hmm
I haven't seen enough from them right now to really have a great assessment as much as I've seen from Mississippi State or South Carolina. But Auburn, I don't know. I think I just trust Hugh Freeze a little bit more maybe than
hmm
the two coaches that are ranked behind him in my list. So that's kind of maybe why I
Yeah,
give them the edge more so over that.
I totally agree.
Honestly, I think he might have the maybe not have the best team. They might not have the
hmm
best team of those three, but I just trust the coach a little bit more than I trust the other two. So
Yeah, we're gonna find out a lot about them. They play LSU and Ole Miss. Obviously, two games they shouldn't
they
win,
still
but you
play
never know.
Arkansas and Mississippi State too,
They
right?
do, yeah.
Yeah,
They
they
play
need
Mississippi State the 28th, and then Arkansas is later in the year.
those are games that you want to win because those are
hmm
the most winnable games left on your schedule.
Yeah, they've
So
had a tough schedule.
if
So,
they can win both of those or at least one of those, I think that would possibly be
I mean,
considered a success.
you're
But
also looking at bowl eligibility. I mean, they're 3-2 right now.
3-2, so they need
Yeah,
three more
they need three
wins.
more wins.
They've
I mean, they've
got
only played 5 games. They've had a bye week already. So,
so if they beat Arkansas and Mississippi State, um,
and I'm sure
what's
they've got one more non-conference game, right? Let's see. Two.
probably
Yeah,
who do they
I don't
play?
have their schedule pulled up. Let's see.
I'd assume so. So if they can win those three, that's bowl eligible first year. I'd say that's a successful
That's a
first
win.
year for Auburn, I think.
They play New Mexico State. Oh, they also play Vanderbilt.
They
So
do?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay, I think that's
yeah. That's
guaranteed bowl eligibility in my
They're looking at
opinion.
like 7-5, 6-6. They might
'Cause
even pull out an upset. You never know. I mean,
yeah,
weird things happen against Alabama. They're playing LSU. That's a rivalry
they're
game. You never know.
I think they'll beat Mississippi State and Vanderbilt for sure.
hmm
Maybe
Yeah,
Arkansas, we'll see. I don't know where it's at, if it's at Auburn or
I
at
think
Arkansas. I think that. that will
I think you're
influence.
looking at one of the worst quarterbacks in the SEC. They play Peyton Thorne, I believe his name is, and
Uh-huh.
Robbie Ashford, two of the
Yeah,
worst quarterbacks in the country or SEC. To get to bowl eligibility or 7-5, that would
be
be
impressive.
huge success for Hugh Freeze. But I can go ahead and get into my number 10 team. I've got Arkansas there. Um, I obviously, like you said, 10 through 12 is a little interchangeable. I've really liked Arkansas's competitive nature. They haven't been able to win an SEC game yet. Um, they lost to LSU by 3, lost to Ole Miss by 7, Texas A&M by 12. It they don't have pieces. They don't have playmakers on offense besides KJ Jefferson. And he threw 2 interceptions last week. I think he's just really pressing to make plays. Which if you're pressing, you're obviously not gonna be able to make plays, right? And he's just making mistakes off of that. Uh, Offensively, they are eighth in the SEC and 31.3 points a game.
Hmm.
Um, they've had that disappointing loss against BYU, a game at home they should have won. They actually let them come back and win that game. Right now, I've got them higher than Auburn because I think they've been even more competitive than Auburn.
Yeah.
Auburn obviously kept it close against Georgia. Hasn't really been able to keep it close against Texas A&M. And
In all
I,
fairness, though, I do think Auburn's played a little bit. The two teams they lost to were a little bit better.
you're right. I mean, you're right. And
Because,
Arkansas has played 3 games, and the SEC hasn't been able to win any of them. But
yeah,
I don't know. I like their competitiveness. Unfortunately for them, they don't have a very good team. They've got Alabama next week, then Mississippi State after that. Maybe we can look for a win there, but
that's a must.
they're
I think
that's a
that
must win.
Mississippi State game is a must win, and if they lose that, I
They're not
really
going to be able to make a bowl.
that, and I really think Sam Pittman might get the axe if he loses that one because
It's insane how far they fell off. You
I
know.
know it went from being they were so horrible before Sam Pittman got there, and he started getting
Hmm.
them back to maybe being competitive, and now
Yeah.
they're falling back into where they were maybe. So it's just kind of it sucks for Arkansas fans. They've not really had any good football teams for a while. Um, they really have never been like a powerhouse in football, to be fair, but they just haven't been competitive very recently. I mean, probably the last time they were really good, I mean, I could be wrong, is around 98 when they lost to Tennessee off
Yeah.
that fumble.
Hmm.
And even before then, right before then they weren't very good. That was kind of a fluke season.
Hmm.
So I feel bad for Arkansas fans. They've never really been that successful in college football. I mean, they have
Yeah.
basketball to look forward to at least though. But
Yeah.
I can go ahead and get into nine unless you have anything
Sure,
else
Jake.
to say.
One more thing before we move on, real quick. I'm just going to mention this. They've got 6 games left on the schedule. They're currently sitting at 2-4. Here's the rest of their schedule, and tell me if they make a bowl. Because I do not think that they do. You got Bama, Mississippi State, Florida, Auburn, FIU, and Missouri.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to be able to win 4 of your next 6 to get to that bowl game.
Well,
If
FIU's
if you're
OW.
yeah,
Um,
but if you're lucky, you're getting to 5,
what are they at right now? They're 2 wins.
2-4. They need 4 wins. The
So,
remaining 6.
yeah, that's tough. That's tough. It's not a
Yeah,
good spot because they've already lost. That
they
BYU
lost the
game
games they
was
should have won.
that
Hmm.
BYU game was a game they should have won. They've lost to who else did they lose to? They lost to A&M, right?
Yep, yep.
And they lost to what was the other one?
They've lost to, let's see, LSU,
LSU.
A&M, Miss, and BYU.
That BYU one I think is really the only one that
I mean,
they
to
really
be fair, they have had a tough schedule so far.
yeah. I think the
You know.
BYU one I think they win that game. I think people are still disappointed losing to Ole Miss, A&M, and LSU.
Hmm.
But that BYU game is really what's kind of tarnishing them
Yeah,
because that was a must-win game and they choked it. It was
yeah.
at home. Like,
Hmm.
oh.
Yes.
All right, I can go ahead and get into Florida.
Yeah, go for it. Both
So,
got Florida, so
so Florida, um, they're at 9. Trevor agrees with me. We both agree on 9 and 8. I don't know. To me, outside of that Tennessee game, they've not looked good at all.
no.
And to me, it could be influenced by my bias as a Tennessee fan. But to me, I just think that they're not a good team. I think 9 is a fair spot for them. I think that that Tennessee game, just about like every year, is their best game of the season. You
Yep.
look back at last year's Tennessee team versus Florida team, you can't tell me that Tennessee wasn't the better team. But Florida comes out and has their probably best loss of the season there, almost coming back and winning the game. I mean, Tennessee had control of the entire game for the most part, but Florida still almost came back and won that thing. They had a chance.
Hmm.
Florida plays their best game against Tennessee every year, and so I don't think, to me, you can't use that game as a barometer for Tennessee and Florida. So to me, Florida's 9. I think that Tennessee win's going to be their only good win of the season.
Yep.
I mean, they're going to get more wins probably, but it's not going to be against high caliber teams. Like they're probably going to beat South Carolina, but I mean, South Carolina's not a good win necessarily. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that'd be a good
I don't know.
win, but like,
I wouldn't be surprised if South Carolina beats them at home.
yeah. So it's just I don't know. I don't think I just there's a lot with the team. They have a pretty good defense. Their quarterback's not that great. I mean, he had a pretty decent game against Tennessee, but
Yeah.
their whole offense revolves around their running backs. And I just think Billy Napier's whole offensive philosophy is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think
It's
that's the problem with their team right now. So their
it's
offense is not gonna
it's
get it done.
it's atrocious. I
Yeah,
think
it should not have ever beaten Tennessee. It
well the problem
it
with
really
that Tennessee game is Tennessee let them get up on them, and then Florida that's what they do is
they sat on the ball
they
for the
just
rest of the
play to
game.
run the clock, and that doesn't work if teams get up on them. And so
Hmm.
Tennessee should have not peed down their leg during that game and showed up,
Hmm.
and they could have won. But no, that's Tennessee. But it's just to me, Florida's whole offensive scheme is horrible, where they just kind of try and run out the clock. It's going to work from time to time, but if you get a team that is going to score on them and get the lead early, they're done. If
Yeah,
they do not have the lead early in the game, they're done. They cannot come back from being down a lot.
that's
They
a tall
kind
task, you know.
It's just the way their offense is. They just run the ball and that's really it.
Hmm.
Um, they kind of just I don't know. They do have a
Yeah, I
pretty
mean,
decent defense, I'd say.
defensively they're about middle of the pack in the SEC statistically.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Defense is going to keep them in some games, but I don't think it's good enough to win games. Obviously, Kentucky ran all over them. Strength of their defense is supposed to be their rushing defense, and Kentucky's so one-dimensional. We're getting ready to get right into it, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I agree. Florida after that Kentucky game, their stock went way down for me. Should they shouldn't have ever been ranked, and that's a game Tennessee should never lose. But of course, it's Florida.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I agree with you. I think we can get into Kentucky a little bit.
Yeah.
I got Kentucky at 8. I think the sole reason I have them at 8 is because they beat Florida. You can't. I mean, I can't put them lower. They just got blown out by Georgia. I think their defense got exposed. People were saying their secondary was much improved from last year. Uh, one of the best secondaries in the SEC. Their their defense got exposed. Georgia can't run the ball right now, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But Carson Beck had 389 passing yards against Kentucky. They couldn't stop him. They also are just so one-dimensional in offense that teams can just key on that.
Yeah.
Devin Leary hasn't shown that he can make any throws. I don't know if you've been watching Levi, but man, if we've been talking about Joe Milton being inaccurate, Devin Leary is even more inaccurate than Joe Milton. He can't make big throws. He has some guys wide open in that Georgia game. and couldn't hit him, especially early in the game when there are plays that you need to make to stay in the ball game, right? He just has not looked comfortable all year. I don't know what's up with that. Obviously, he looked great. Well, I think he was overrated at NC State. I don't know if he can't fit into this system or what, but they're really heavily leaning on this run game. If you shut that down, they're so one-dimensional, and their defense got exposed.
With all due
And I
respect,
think
their run game is good though.
it is good. It is good. But I could not justify them. There's no way they would be ranked. If I was making a poll, I there's no way you can rank them still after that performance.
Yeah,
That's pretty crazy to me. I think they're still 20. They're 24. They only dropped 4 spots after getting beat 51-13.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like you said, I mean Ray Davis leads the SEC in rushing yards at 653. I'm just I think if you're that one dimensional, I don't know. I just Devin Leary just has not looked good. Uh,
yeah,
he's only completed 92 passes. He's completed 54% of his passes, which is really bad.
yeah.
That's not efficient at all. I can let you pick it up from there.
It's kind of the thing with Kentucky is outside of that Florida game, they really haven't looked good all year. It
No, they
wasn't
haven't played
until that
anybody either.
it
They
wasn't
have not played
until that
anybody.
they won that Florida game handed like really easily that
Mm.
people were like, "Oh, maybe Kentucky's really good." No, they weren't. It's just everyone. The thing is, the problem with college football is everyone puts too much stock into all different things. They see Florida beats Tennessee. Tennessee was ranked. That means Florida's really good. Kentucky beats Florida. Oh, that must mean Kentucky's really good. When in reality, Tennessee a probably is an okay team. Um, I think there's the number five team in the SEC, but to me, that's not really saying much. Um, but it's just everyone puts too much stock into wins that kind of there's little bit more that can go into explaining how they happened. It's
Yeah, you
just
got out of context wins, right? Like, look.
Kentucky was 5-0,
Mhm.
but you look at their wins, they're against bad teams, and you look at how they performed against those teams, they didn't perform good. And I understand people are gonna be like, "Oh, you're a Tennessee fan, y'all looked horrible against Austin P, and y'all looked horrible against uh Florida." And yeah, that's true, but there's still certain aspects of Tennessee. Tennessee still pulled away in some of those games. Kentucky, to me, I think it looked like they were close in all of those bad games. I don't know. It's hard to compare because teams are teams, but I don't know. Kentucky just there was nothing that impressed me about them. And then they beat this Florida team, and it's like, oh, okay, they might be a little bit better, but then no, they're gonna get stomped out by Georgia. I still think they're a way better team than Florida, though.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know. They've had red flags that people just ignored because of the Florida win. But
yeah,
if Florida exposes those red flags, no one's talking about them,
yeah,
and no one's talking about them now. No
they're
one should be
just
talking about them now.
they're just way too one-dimensional. And
Hmm.
Florida did not capitalize on them being one-dimensional because Florida has a not so great coach and he sucks on the road. I think that's a lot of the reason why Florida lost the game.
Yeah,
I mean, I
you
think
catch them at home, and it might
it,
be a different story.
yeah, it could be. You never know because it's football.
Mm.
You can't really do that. You can't just be like, oh, they lost. Florida lost to Kentucky, so right now Kentucky's a better team. But you never know. You play at Florida, that could be a loss. Same thing with Tennessee and Florida. You play at Tennessee, that who knows? Tennessee wins that
Yeah,
game. It's kind of just luck of the draw where
yeah,
you get a lot of it. There's better teams, but some things go into games that factor in. Tennessee was better than South Carolina last year, but South Carolina got Tennessee at the right time. Tennessee lost. So it's just,
and yeah, that's what makes the sport beautiful, though. I think
yeah,
that's what makes the sport great. Um,
anybody can win any week.
yeah, but yeah. So my number 7 team is Tennessee. I got us right in the middle of the pack. Um, my main thing is so far you lost to a Florida team that we just discussed, uh, and you beat a really bad South Carolina team, uh, and he took care of business in that game. 21-point win is a bigger win than Georgia had against them, right?
Hmm.
Um, I still haven't seen enough. I think the teams ahead of them have more. They've played in bigger games. Um, and I just think there's some issues that they seem to resolve against South Carolina. But at the same time, it is South Carolina, right? He took care of business against a bad team. I'm very curious if they, beat A&M this weekend, they move up big time, I
Yeah,
think. Um, and that Bama game, the stakes are a little bit higher in that Bama game, right? I mean, this is a team that still has a shot to win the East. A lot has to get done, but they're not out of the race yet, obviously. Uh, they're sitting at fifth in the East right now, uh, tied with Missouri for, well, I guess they're tied with Missouri for fourth. Uh, but you got Kentucky and Florida both ahead of them, as well as Georgia, obviously. But
yeah.
I don't know, I can
Which
let
why
you
wait
talk
wait
about
wait.
your university.
So
Yeah,
why
yeah,
is
go ahead.
Missouri tied with us?
We're both 1-1, and we don't have a head-to-head. We're both 1-1 in conference, don't have a head-to-head.
So it's kind of confusing though because
I mean,
Missouri.
technically, they're higher on ESPN currently.
Well, so because Missouri, so it's all kind of confusing because Missouri hasn't played Florida yet or Kentucky yet.
Yeah,
So really, Tennessee's technically behind all of them in a way, even though they're all tied except Florida technically gets the edge over Tennessee, but Florida
no,
doesn't get
no, no.
the.
So Kentucky is second. Florida's
Well,
uh
other than Kentucky,
third.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean Kentucky. Florida
Well,
gets the.
Florida's 2-1 in the SEC right now, so they're third.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
they've played more
yeah,
games in the SEC.
yeah,
That's
yeah. It's
right.
just it's just more games. That's the only
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
But yeah, I
if
mean,
we were all 1-1 though, it'd be kind of. I forgot that
it'd be
Florida has played
confusing,
three. It'd be
right?
hard because they got the head-to-head with Tennessee, but they don't have the head-to-head with Missouri. But Tennessee also doesn't have a head-to-head, but so it'd been weird. But it all doesn't matter until you get to the end of the year, really.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can go ahead and go into mine if you.
Yeah. Yep.
So let me get this out of the way. I've already said it. Um, honestly, I say 7 through 3 are interchangeable. Really, 7 through 5 are more so interchangeable. Um, I think 3 and 4. The more I'm thinking about it, I think they're pretty set in stone there for me. But 5 through 7, it's a little iffy for me. It's hard for me to decide. A part of it is my orange tinted glasses. I always want Tennessee to be the better team, so part of that goes into me putting them a little higher. But I mean, it's not like I don't have any reason for it. But Missouri, I have them at 7, mainly because the whole reason I was thinking they were way better than I thought they were, which they are having a better season than I thought they would have right now, is because of that Kansas State win. But that Kansas State win to me is not that great anymore.
Doesn't look great. Yep.
They won by barely any at home. Uh, that's their only good win on the season. And I mean, I get it. They're 4-1, or they've only have one loss. I don't know if they've how many games they've played, but they're either 5-1 or 4-1, whatever it is. Uh, their only good win's Kansas State. The only
Hmm.
other good team they've played on the year is LSU, and they lost.
Right.
So I mean, they're in the middle of the pack with Tennessee, Texas A&M, and with Tennessee and Texas A&M. But to me, I mean, you could say the same thing about Tennessee too, where Tennessee's lost to Florida, the best team on their schedule so far. So it's like it's hard. They're all about the same to me. I think there's reasons why I personally put Tennessee higher that I'll get to when I get to Tennessee. But I don't know. Missouri, Texas A&M, and Tennessee are really close. Um, I don't know. I just haven't seen anything to me. I don't think I don't think Eli Drinkowitz is as good of a coach as Josh Heupel. I don't know. Jimbo Fisher's kind of a clown, but he's got a good
Yeah.
team. So I don't know. It's hard. It's hard for this whole power ranking is really hard for me because I haven't seen enough from all the teams. Who knows? You get to the end of the season, it could be wildly different from what it is right now.
Right,
And
right.
we're in week 7. So it's just it's hard to really say, but I don't know. They have a decent defense and a decent offense. So to me, they're around middle of the pack at number 7.
Yeah, I'm gonna get into Missouri in a minute, but yeah, we both have A&M at 6. Um, I don't know. I think they should have beat Alabama last week. I think Jimbo Fisher made a lot of coaching mistakes. He's never been aggressive enough, especially in a big game against Alabama. You got to be aggressive, right? He's got plenty of time at the end of the second half, two timeouts in his pocket, and needs the ball out at the end with a 7 point lead heading into halftime. You get Heupel, you get Lane Kiffin, you get Nick Saban or Kirby Smart. They're all going to try to add to that lead. Plenty of time left. I know they had 43 seconds when they got the ball back to go in the half, but they also didn't take any of their timeouts before Alabama punted. So you're looking at, two and a half minutes left on the clock, right? No timeouts, but still a chance to get some points on the board, even a field goal, right? Uh, I think coaching lost them that game. They played good enough to win, 26-20. Their offense is pretty strong, even with that backup quarterback. They have some weapons at receiver. The defensive line is elite, probably top two in the SEC. I'd say Tennessee's is right there with them. Their secondary is bad. It just looked like when they weren't able to get pressure against Alabama, they uh they couldn't defend the pass. And this is Jalen Milroe who can't throw the football, right? This is a guy that likes using his legs, and Bama couldn't run against them, but they sure did pass against them, um, which is a little concerning. I think they got exposed a little bit, and that loss to Miami is looking real bad after
Yeah.
what Miami did Saturday.
Well,
Um,
it's also concerning because Alabama has not been a passing team,
I know,
and they're going to start passing on you.
yeah,
And I get it. You held a pretty good rush attack to less than what they've been doing all season, but you got to be
they
able to
didn't
do
try to
both.
run. Bama didn't try to run the ball on them though. That's the
That's
thing.
fair. But either way, if you're gonna stop one, even if that is the case, if you're gonna stop one side of the ball, you gotta stop the other too. You can't just let them pass over you. So it's just kind of
Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed to me like if they weren't bringing blitzes, their defensive line wasn't able to get home, and they were not aggressive enough in bringing blitzes. Like Jalen Milroe exposed them in the second half. Um, and their best wins right now are Auburn and Arkansas. For us, those teams are the bottom 10 of the SEC right now.
yeah,
Another unproven team, Texas A&M and Tennessee. I think that's the difference between the top seven for me is most of those teams are unproven. The bottom, you know, the bottom seven, those teams have been in big games and big moments and have not shown up,
yeah.
right?
They've just been shown to be bad. Other than, I
Right.
mean,
They've been
uh,
exposed. I'd say all those teams have been exposed.
Kentucky. I mean,
They were exposed
I guess
Saturday.
so.
I mean, it's the number one team in the country, but they were exposed Saturday.
Yeah,
They've proven more than the rest of the teams in the SEC, but that's what I'm saying. The top seven hasn't really proven much. Um, I'd say A&M has lost the two biggest games on their schedule so far, which is a
yeah.
concern. Um, I don't know. I'm really interested to see this Texas A&M Tennessee game Saturday.
It's
I
gonna,
think it's gonna be really competitive because both of these teams are really similar in my eyes.
yeah. It's gonna tell you a lot about them. It's gonna, to me, whoever wins that game is gonna shoot up in my rankings, and whoever loses, and it also depends on how the game ends.
Right.
Like
If it's tight, yeah.
if it's a tight game, Um, I don't know. Probably much won't change. I'll probably move Tennessee. I just offhand, I'd probably move Tennessee down to 7 and Missouri to 6. A&M to maybe A&M go up farther if Tennessee lost, and vice versa. I don't know. It just depends on how the game goes, I guess. But it's gonna tell us a lot because both these teams are unproven right now. They both have lost games that they should have won, and they both have some good wins against bottom of the SEC, like Tennessee has South Carolina,
Mhm.
A&M's got Auburn, Arkansas. So it's going to tell us a lot. If Tennessee can't win at home, it's going to be it's going to be more like an 8-4, 7-5 season for them if they can't win this game. So we'll see. Um, but A&M, yeah. Did you
Yeah.
have I gotten into A&M yet? Because I know you were.
No, no, not yet, not yet.
Okay, I can talk about A&M. So they're my sixth team, just like Trevor. We both agree on it. Um, they just the Alabama game is disappointing. You're at home playing a Alabama team that is not near where they should be or they have been in the past. This is not the same Alabama as old, and you just didn't play a great game. You had the opportunity to get up on Bama and you didn't capitalize. You screwed yourself over. And on top of that, your secondary's been horrible. I get it. You have a really good D line, but there's more to a defense than just your D line. And if you have a really bad secondary, it's not going to be good for you. Their offense is just meh. They're playing with a backup quarterback, but I mean, he's still a good quarterback. They should be able to win games with him. So to me, they're behind Tennessee. I think Tennessee has an overall better defense than
Yeah,
A&M.
I agree.
Now,
I do agree with that.
in our last episode, I said A&M was the best defense in the SEC. I don't agree with that anymore. I'd say Georgia does.
Hmm.
Um, but I think they're just one-dimensional on defense, and I personally think Tennessee has a better offense than A&M too. I just think that Tennessee hasn't hit their stride with their offense, and I think there's more of an upside to Tennessee's offense at its best compared to A&M's offense at its best. If Tennessee can start playing like I know they can, they're going to have a good one of the best offenses and one of the best defenses in the SEC. It's just a matter of if Joe Milton can get out of his head and the receivers can also get out of their head.
Right.
And I guess the O line too, which I think Cooper Mays is going to help with that. And so I'm going to kind of transition from A&M into my talk about Tennessee. I think Tennessee's just an overall better team than A&M, and that's why I have them at 5. I think they should win this A&M game. And if they don't, it's gonna have me questioning it all. It's gonna have me change it. Tennessee's probably gonna drop down to maybe 8. Um, who knows? Depending on how they look against A&M, if it's a really bad game, I might even drop them behind Florida, because then maybe I've been wrong this whole time, and Florida actually is a better team. But right now, to me, I haven't seen anything from A&M or Missouri to show me that they're better teams than Tennessee. And I
Hmm.
think Tennessee has a better upside right now to where once they hit their stride, I think they're a more dominant team or can be a more dominant team. To me, this is the best Tennessee's defense has been since Josh Heupel's been here. And if he can just get the offense clicking, it's going they're going to finish the season with 9 wins in my opinion. If that's a big if. So to me, the defense honestly for Tennessee has been outside of that Florida game, at least outside of the first half of that Florida game, the Tennessee defense has been one of the best in the SEC, if not, I would say they're behind Georgia, and maybe Alabama. The defense has been really good this season. The defense doesn't really have much to prove other than that Alabama game. I think that's going to be something they need to prove. They need to prove that they're going to show up the whole game for an away game because that Florida game was embarrassing the first half. And while you could make the argument Florida let up in the second half, they played a pretty decent or pretty good second half against Florida's defense, but by that time the damage was already done and the offense couldn't get back. So we'll see. If the offense can get clicking, I think 5 five or 4-3 is a good spot for Tennessee, but right now it's five. And I honestly, it's all interchangeable, but I just think there's a higher upside. Plus, Tennessee's run game is really good. I think Tennessee has one of the best running back cores in the SEC, if not the best. And I think as the season goes, they're going to rely a little bit more on the running backs. And I think Joe Milton will hopefully hit his stride as the season goes. But that's kind of why I have them at five. But they still have a lot to prove. And the first half of the season's not been great. And so if they can just have a turning point here against A&M, that's going to tell us all we need to know. But I'll let you get into your number five.
Yeah, five. I got Missouri. I think they had a prime opportunity on Saturday to really cement themselves in the top four, if not the top three of the SEC. I think they've proven more than A&M and Tennessee, and here's why. I think they have a better win than both of these teams. A&M A&M's best wins are Auburn, Arkansas. Uh, Missouri's best win is Kansas State. Obviously, this Kansas State team just lost to Oklahoma State. Um, but I think they're still competitive in their respective league.
Hmm.
I think Tennessee's best win is South Carolina, which I'd honestly say is worse than beating Auburn and Arkansas. At
Maybe,
least
yeah.
A&M has two SEC wins, right? I mean, Tennessee hasn't had the opportunity yet.
Well,
But
I
I
think they
also
lost to Florida, but A&M has
that's what I
also
was yeah.
played also has played more. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't think that Kansas State wins that good, in my
it's
opinion.
not great, but
I honestly
I'm
think that
also
it's
gonna say,
I
sorry,
don't
go
think it's
ahead.
as good as A&M or Tennessee's wins, to be honest, in my opinion. That's just my opinion, but
I don't know. I disagree because I think they're worse. I think Missouri's loss is a better loss than A&M and Tennessee have both had.
yeah, I can
I
agree
think
with that.
that's where I'm putting them at five, right? You were competitive in your biggest game of the season. You lost to the fourth best team in the SEC, in my opinion.
Hmm.
An offense that's been first in the SEC, in my opinion, as well. And you were very competitive up until the last play of the game, where Brady Cook threw the interception. It might not have been the exact last play of the game, but Brady Cook threw an interception for a touchdown. You were down 42-39 with a chance, one last drive to win this game.
Yeah,
Uh, and I I I could I'm putting them at five for now, but that doesn't mean I am confident that they will finish top five at the end of the season.
yeah,
Their path to 9 wins seems very probable. They play Kentucky, South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, and Arkansas. Um, if you only lose to Georgia and Tennessee, you're sitting at 9 wins right there.
yeah,
And those aren't guaranteed losses either. I'm confident in their quarterback. I think they have a top five quarterback in the SEC. I think it's experience, and he's proven this year and last year that he can lead their team. Um, I don't know. I like you kind of said, 5 through 7's pretty interchangeable. I think Missouri has a slight edge. Um, but that's not to say that they're necessarily better than Texas A&M or Tennessee. I think right now they are. Um, but I
they've
think that could
played.
change.
The thing with Missouri is they haven't played as tough of a schedule necessarily as A&M and M and Tennessee so far, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Uh, that Kansas State game at the time, it made it seem like they were, but now looking back, that Kansas State team is not that good. So to me,
Yeah,
yes, I totally agree with you. Their loss is much better than Tennessee and Texas A&M's losses, but I just don't think they have a great win resume. So I don't know. It's like I said, and like you're agreeing with, 7 through 5 is pretty interchangeable.
yeah. I mean, I kind of disagree, as in I don't think that you can say their schedule's been easier
Well,
than Tennessee and Texas A&M.
relatively, it's not.
I'd say
They're
it's
pretty
been
close.
easier than A&M so
Yeah,
far,
I guess.
but not Tennessee. I think
Yeah,
their schedule's been
yeah,
just as
that's probably right. That's
I think
probably
their
right.
schedule's been just as easy as Tennessee has because they haven't really played anyone yet. Um, but yeah, I mean it is pretty interchangeable. but I mean,
Hmm.
we both agree top four. We can get into that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the LSU Ole Miss thing is I think the top four is pretty self-explanatory, right?
Yeah.
LSU at four. They just had a big win against Missouri away. Um, they're 3-2 right now. They, I don't know. It's funny they're at four, right? Because
Well, they've just played
uh,
such a hard schedule so
they
far.
have, they
They're
have,
play
yeah.
played two of the best teams in the SEC according to us, and they've played a top
They
top
top
five,
six, I think.
six, top
Think they're four right now. So
Florida State.
yeah,
So
they're
yeah,
fourth.
they've played the two of the best teams in the SEC and one of the best teams in the country. So it's like, yeah, they lost all three of them, but I
Just
mean,
two.
every team behind them probably would have lost to all three of those teams too.
Well, they
So
only lost two games so far.
who?
They've only lost to Florida State and Ole Miss.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, LSU. I
So
mean, they beat
they have two
Missouri.
losses. I don't know why. Yeah, you're right. I don't know. Yeah. For some reason, I forgot. I thought that they had lost. They had already played Alabama, but I was just misremembering something. So yeah,
Yeah,
they've only lost to Ole Miss and Florida State, two good teams.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
mean, the defense is terrible. Secondary is horrible. Probably worse than the SEC. Offense is legit. They remind me a lot of our team, Tennessee,
hmm
last year. Other than we were able to clutch up games, and they have not been able to do that so far this year.
yeah,
But I mean, the rest of their schedule, besides Alabama, relatively easy. The second hardest team they play is Texas A&M. Um,
they should have won
uh,
that Ole Miss game.
they should have won
Really,
that Ole Miss. Yeah, they should have won that game. But I mean, it's at Ole Miss. Two really good offenses. Like they were competitive. They have been competitive. Other than the Florida State game, but that's not even an SEC game, right? So,
yeah, and it's I mean top four team in the country as of right now.
mhm,
Which part of that is because they're undefeated and they beat LSU. So I don't know. It's a lot of it. People just you beat a team. So I don't know. Florida State might not be as good as everyone thinks, but I think they are. So I don't know.
yeah,
LSU they have a pretty good reason to be at four.
yeah. At three we have Ole Miss.
Yep.
Uh, my I personally like LSU better. I know you like Ole Miss better.
hmm
I mean, obviously they have to both be at three. I
I don't
mean,
know. I
Ole
think
Miss
they're
has to be at three.
pretty similar teams.
Yeah, I think the only edge is just the head-to-head win, right?
Yeah, I'd agree.
I I think Ole Miss has been more disappointing in my opinion. Just like A&M, you have a prime position to beat Bama, and you can't do it, right? Uh, only put up 10 points. And Bama does have a good defense, but I think both of those games were just set up for you to win. Bama's having a down year. And it's pretty disappointing. And then you play Georgia Tech relatively close. You pull away at the end. You squeak by LSU, obviously are a good team, and you beat Arkansas by 7. Now, a similar thing can be said for LSU, right? They also squeak by Arkansas. Uh, I don't know. I
I
just think their offense hasn't been as good as it was years past.
I personally think that these two are the most similar teams in the conference, and
Yeah, I
really
agree.
the only reason Ole Miss is ahead is because they won.
Hmm.
If LSU wins that game, LSU's ahead.
Yeah.
That's really all it comes down to, in my opinion, is Ole Miss
Defense
won
is struggling. Offense is playing really well. So it's every game is pretty much a toss up because it's every game's going to be a shootout.
because they both pretty much have the same resume. I mean,
Hmm.
other than Ole Miss only has one loss, right?
Yep.
Other than that, Ole Miss has
I mean
played an
they've both
easier
played
schedule.
Arkansas. Yeah, they played a bad Tulane team. Not necessarily a bad Tulane team, but a Tulane team that had a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Um,
Just
they
LSU's played a much tougher schedule, I think. I think
Mhm.
Ole Miss plays the same schedule as LSU. It's pretty similar.
Yeah,
Most teams are gonna lose all the games LSU lost. So,
right. And Ole Miss has a couple tough games left. They play Georgia and Texas A&M. Those should be interesting. They also have Vanderbilt, Auburn, Louisiana Monroe, and Mississippi State. So games they should win, but
Yeah,
Georgia
Georgia's a
A&M gonna be
loss.
tough games. Yeah,
A&M, we'll see.
we'll see.
Uh, we'll see how good A&M is after the Tennessee game. At
Yeah,
the
the
moment,
rest of those
I'd
games
pick
should
Ole
be a
Miss
win.
though.
Yeah, yeah,
But
they've got the potential to be 9-3, but just a weird 9-3 team. But
yeah, and so then Alabama.
hmm
Um,
yeah, less than impressive.
there's not much to say about Alabama other than they're number two in the SEC. But I mean, the SEC's not been that great this year. So it says more about the SEC to me that Alabama is at two than Alabama themselves.
They're playing so many competitive games, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they're still
they're
a
they're
good
they're
team.
one
They're
they're
still a
one
good
slip
team.
up away though from losing a game. I mean, everyone seems to be out to get them this year. They're having trouble with half the teams on their schedule so far. They've had trouble beating, right?
Yeah,
Including a South Florida team.
they're
So I mean,
they're just not a dominant team. Is
they're
kind of
not
what it
dominant.
is. The better
Do you,
team usually is going to win, which is Alabama in most of their games this year, but they're
mhm,
just not dominant. And for Alabama, that says a lot because that means they're not probably going to win the SEC and they're probably not going to make it to the playoff. For
yeah,
Alabama, that's not where you want to be. Most teams would kill to be where Alabama is right now. But
hmm
Alabama, if you're gauging it Alabama off of what they want to be at, they're not where they want to be at. And so yeah,
yeah.
they're number two, but that's not good enough for Alabama, especially considering how bad the SEC is right now. It
They're
really
playing
doesn't say
really
much.
good defensively. Um, they haven't been able to throw the ball besides last week, right?
Yeah.
We saw them really, really get after it. They ha the biggest thing in my opinion is they can't run the ball without Jalen Milrow. Their
True.
offensive line, which was supposed to be, one of the best in the SEC, uh, has not looked great run blocking. Making Jalen Milrow beat you when you're bringing pressure and keeping them contained, it's gonna be really tough for them, potentially when they face Georgia in the SEC championship game, if they make it that far, they're gonna be tested by Tennessee and LSU. They're lucky they get them both at home this year.
Yep.
That gives them a big advantage. If without that, do you play them both away like you did last year? Those are tough games to win. Um, I'm really really hoping Tennessee can be competitive in that game, and I think they can.
It's probably a
Uh,
loss, but
Probably, but Bama's gonna play a lot of close games this year. They might slip up. You never know. They've kind of fixed penalty issues, but they still haven't been great on the road. Had a lot of penalties against Texas A&M, a lot of pre-snap penalties. It's it's really it's tough that Tennessee and LSU have to play in Bryant Denny. If they didn't, it could be a whole different outlook for this team.
yep.
Um, but yeah, Georgia number one. They came out of their show.
Yeah, they
They,
did.
ex- I mean, I really wish Tennessee could have played them early in the season. But I know you've said this before, Levi, but I think they show. I think you're right. I think they show it for big games. You got a number 20 Kentucky team walking in there. It's a night game. Haven't looked good all year. Gotten off to really slow starts. And guess what? You get off to a fast start in the first quarter. And that game's already over in the first quarter. It's something
It's
we haven't seen all season.
it's less so they don't play to their competition. They just don't play unless they have tough competition. They just it's like
Yeah.
it's something mental. Like it's just they
hmm
don't want to show up unless it's a team that people are like, "Oh, this team's good."
hmm
So it's just weird. Georgia's weird. They're a weird team. They're probably the best team in the SEC. They are right now. They probably will be at the end of the season.
Yep.
They're going to be number one until they lose. And who knows if they will lose because they don't play a tough schedule. They've got a good defense. Their offense is
They can't run the ball.
meh.
That's the same thing as Bama. They cannot run the football. They don't have an elite running back. Like you look at Georgia and Bama years past, they have elite running backs, right?
Yeah,
You got a Heisman Trophy winner in Derrick Henry. Um, they haven't been able to run the ball, but they haven't had to.
yeah.
Neither of those teams have had to yet, right?
To be
They have
fair,
not been.
both Georgia and Alabama have such good defenses that they're shutting down teams enough to where they don't have to have great offenses,
Hmm.
and that's fine. But when you play a good offense like Alabama did with Texas, they lost. And
Hmm.
Texas is still a good team, but they're not. Everyone after they beat Alabama was like, "Oh, this team's going to win the national championship." Texas is not a the as good of a team as people thought. I mean, they're still good. They're still a top 10 team. They beat Oklahoma, or they lost to Oklahoma, who's also a good team now, that evidently. But still, it's just Alabama is going to lose to teams that have way better offenses than them. But if they can shut teams down, they're fine. And it's kind of the same thing with
Just like they
Georgia.
did
But
against Ole Miss.
yeah, and Ole Miss is a good team, so that
Yeah.
it's
I
just
think,
it's
yeah,
weird. This whole year of the SEC is just weird.
I think one of the big differences between Bama and Georgia right now is Georgia actually really hasn't faced a good offense yet.
Yeah,
You could say the best offense they faced is a Kentucky team that can't throw the football, right? Um, and then but Bama's faced two really good offenses and had really different stories, right? They shut down Ole Miss, couldn't stop Texas.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, Georgia, I mean, Carson Beck's playing pretty well right now. I mean, I thought at the beginning of the season he looked a little off, but when you got a tight end like Brock Bowers, who's just a playmaker,
yeah,
that no one that's a mismatch for every single team. They've got enough weapons just right there, right?
yeah. See, the thing is, yeah, I agree with you too. Alabama's been tested. Georgia really hasn't outside of that Kentucky game. But Georgia really isn't going to be tested at all this
Mhm.
season. I
I don't
mean,
know.
the SEC
I
championship
Yeah,
really is
that's their test, right?
their test, unless Tennessee is a better team than most people think. And then that Tennessee Georgia game is actually going to be a test. Maybe the Missouri Georgia game could be a test.
Mhm.
But outside of those two games, they really have nothing left on their schedule. That Florida
Well, looking at
game,
yeah,
that
well,
Florida game is not going to be a test because it's not in Florida.
mhm,
It's in Jacksonville, which is the dumbest thing, playing in a neutral site game every year because
mhm,
Georgia just gets to cakewalk through that because they're playing a bad Florida team every year. And the only reason Florida catches some teams that they shouldn't the past few years is because they're playing at home. And so
right.
Georgia doesn't even get that, or Florida doesn't even get that benefit. So Georgia's really only has two games left on their schedule that to me are tests.
Listen to this November. All right. So you're Georgia right now, right? You're
Hmm.
playing Missouri, but you get them at home. Okay.
Yep,
You get Ole Miss actually the following week.
that's a
You get
test.
them
I
at
forgot about that one. I forgot
Yeah.
they played.
You get them at home as well though. And then you play Tennessee and you have to play Tennessee on the road, right?
Yeah,
And then Georgia Tech on the road, but I mean, barring that Miami blunder, Georgia Tech is not a good football team.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a 3 game stretch that's fairly tough.
yeah. I forgot about Ole
Those are the
Miss.
only three tough games they play all year though. You could argue the Kentucky game was supposed to be, but
And the problem
I don't know.
is none of their games are away.
Yeah, I know. They've got
They
everybody at home except Tennessee this year, so
It's just so dumb. It always goes back to the stupid Florida, Georgia, stupid cocktail thing. Same thing with Oklahoma, Texas. My opinion is always going to be the same. I think the neutral site rivalry games are the dumbest thing ever. I think they need to get rid of it. I know it's tradition. It's a stupid tradition. It's one of the dumbest traditions I think in all of college football to not play at stadiums. The magic of college football is the environment of the stadium, and I think
the
that's
home
one of
crowd, right?
the
Big
biggest
advantage.
things, and you're just turning it into an NFL game where it's just like, oh, we'll just have the I mean, it's not like an NFL game because I mean NFL teams have home games, but there really isn't as much. I mean, there's some NFL teams
There's
where
not
it's a
much
little
of a crowd
different.
advantage, right?
Yeah, for the most part, like if you're playing at the Titans Stadium, that's not really much of an advantage to the Titans necessarily. But when you're playing in Neyland or you're playing at Florida or you're playing at LSU, that gives them such a higher advantage to the home team, especially if the crowd decides to show up. And with this whole Georgia Florida, Georgia, they already don't play that many. They play all of their best games at home this year, and so their other game that they play that's tough is at a neutral site game, and it's like that every year. It's usually in the past it's been their toughest game on their schedule every year, and it's at a neutral
Hmm.
site every single year.
Yeah,
And I get
I
it's in
mean, yeah.
Florida too, but I
Get
don't know,
this
it's
though,
just
right?
dumb.
The closest game Georgia's had all year was that 27-20 win against Auburn.
And it
That
was
is the
at Auburn.
only that was the only road game they have played all season.
I mean, I guess you could say that South Carolina game was somewhat close.
But that was at home. So
Yeah,
you're looking well in the second half was
they
that
pulled
Auburn
away.
game
Yeah,
came down to the wire,
yeah.
right? That's the only game they play on the road this year so far.
Hmm.
So you're looking at Neyland, you're looking at Tennessee versus Georgia in Neyland, November 18th could determine a lot in the SEC. And it's a big advantage to Tennessee as far as home field advantage goes.
Especially since Georgia really hasn't had a road test outside of
They
that
have not
Auburn
been
game, and they
tested. Right.
won't have a road
And
test outside of that Auburn game.
you know this Georgia game will be a night game. It's going to be a different environment than what they have faced so far this season.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, if you don't have anything else, I think we can wrap it up here.
yeah, sure.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for listening to another edition of the SEC Boys. Tuning in for Week 7 Power Rankings show. We hope to continue the SEC Boys podcast. Please follow us on our socials. We are on Instagram at Vol Boys Podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date on all videos that we drop, Vols or SEC related. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. We'll catch you all later.
See
Go
ya.
Vols.